Hello everyone, welcome back to video lecture on the module RTOS, that is Real-Time Operating System for Embedded System Design. So in previous lecture we have gone through initial topics related to this module, that is operating system basics, types of operating systems, and then the concepts of task, process and threads. So let us continue with the next topic, that is multiprocessing and multitasking. Multiprocessing and multitasking. So here let us understand the concepts or the definitions of multiprocessing and multitasking. So when we look into these concepts at first, so we think that they are same, right? But actually they differ. So let us know how they differ. In context of operating system, multiprocessing describes the ability to execute multiple processes simultaneously. So what is multiprocessing? Multiprocessing is the ability of a system to execute multiple processes simultaneously or at the same time, correct? And the systems which are capable of performing multitasking will be known as multitasking systems, right? Okay, and the next point is multiprocessor systems possess multiple processors and can execute multiple processes simultaneously. So one thing that we need to keep in our mind is a processor will be allocated for only one process at a given instant of time. So a single processor cannot be allocated for more than one process to execute at a given instance of time. Correct. So that should be known. So if you want to execute multiple processes simultaneously or at a given instance of time, there should be multiple processors. Okay. So wherein each processors which are available will be allocated to different process, and at given instance of time, multiple processes will be executed in multiple processors. Yes. So that is the concept of multiprocessing. Done. So one more concept which sounds similar to multiprocessing and multitasking is multiprogramming. So what is multiprogramming? Means it is the ability of the operating system to load multiple processes into the memory. So once the processes are loaded into memory, what happens? They will be in the ready state that we have come across in previous slides, right? So the ability of the OS to load multiple processes into the memory is called as multiprogramming. Yes. And then what is multitasking? So if you consider a uniprocessor system, that is a system with only one processor, so it is not possible to execute multiple processes simultaneously. So as I told, a processor will be allocated only for one process at a time. In the case of uniprocessor, as there will be only one processor, so only one process can be executed at a given time. Yes. However, with uniprocessor system, it is possible to achieve some degree of pseudo-parallelism in the execution of multiple processes by switching different processes. Yes, so it is not possible to execute multiple processes simultaneously in a uniprocessor system, but however, we can achieve something called as pseudo-parallelism. Pseudo-parallelism means false parallelism. Yes, so there will not be existing, or in reality multiple processes will not be executing simultaneously, but we will be getting an illusion that multiple processes are being executed simultaneously. Actually, they will be executing concurrently. So what is that? How that will be executed? We will be seeing in the future slides. Okay. So the ability of the processor to hold multiple processes in the memory and switching the processor from executing one process to another process is known as multitasking. So multitasking is going to create the illusion of multiple tasks executing in parallel. So multitasking, the concept of multitasking is going to create an illusion that multiple processes are getting executed in parallel. Yes, so actually it is not going to take place, but it is going to create an illusion for the viewers. In multitasking environment, when task or process switching happens, the virtual processor gets its properties converted into that of physical processor. So we have come across this concept already when we were dealing with the definition of task or process. So task or process is nothing but or it can be treated as a virtual processor, as it is going to bear all the properties that a processor has, correct? So the properties of a process and the properties of processor are same. So we call a process or a task as a virtual processor, and when the processor is scheduled for execution, so all these virtual properties of the process will be converted into physical properties. Yes, we have already seen that, and this is taken care by whom? Scheduler. Yes, scheduler is one of the operating system kernel services what we have come across, right? So it is going to take care of scheduling of different processes. Yes, so whenever a CPU switching happens, the current context of execution should be saved to retrieve it at a later stage when CPU switches to the process which was interrupted due to execution switching. Yes, so here we'll be coming across two more concepts like interrupted process and interrupting process. So the currently executing process can be considered as interrupted process, and the new process which is going to interrupt this currently executing process can be considered as interrupting process. Okay, so when a currently executing process is interrupted by a new process, then the current status of the interrupted process must be saved, and then we need to schedule the interrupting process. Once the execution of interrupting process is completed, we need to schedule back the interrupted process, and the execution should carry on from the point where it was interrupted. We should not start the execution from initial stage of that process. Yes, so for that purpose we need to save the current context of interrupted process, and then we need to schedule the interrupting process. Correct. So the act of switching CPU among the processors or changing the current execution context is called as context switching. So what all we discussed just now, that is saving the current context of interrupted process and then switching the execution to interrupting process is called as context switching. And during the context switching, so there will be a necessary to save the current status of interrupted process. So what we are going to save there means is nothing but we are going to save context details like register contents. What were the register contents? What were the memory contents? And what was the system resources that were used? And what was the execution time when the process was interrupted? So saving all these details is called as context saving. Okay, so after context saving, what happens? So the interrupting process will be starting its execution. So it will be completing. So once it completes the execution, what we should do? We should schedule back the interrupted process. And during this time, we need to retrieve the saved context files. So what we had saved through context saving before switching the execution to interrupting process, so all those details must be retrieved back, and this process of retrieval of context details is called as context retrieval. So what is the necessity of context retrieval means? So we need to resume the execution of interrupted process. We don't want to start its execution from first. We need to resume its execution from the state where it was preempted. Correct? For that we require context retrieval. Yes, so hope you are understood with this concepts of context switching, context saving and context retrieval. Okay, so next we shall understand these concepts in a better manner by considering an illustration. So we have considered a graph wherein the x-axis represents time and y-axis represents different processes. Okay, so initially what we do is we are going to schedule a process. Let us call this as process 1. So it will be running, it will be in running state. So it is going to execute for a certain duration of time. So after that, at this point of time, the execution should switch to one more process, that is process 2. Yes, so there should be a switching of execution from process 1 to process 2. But the process 2 will not start its execution instantly, right? So there will be certain delay wherein the process 2 will be idle initially. So why this delay means? This is because of context switching. Yes, so there is a need of context switching to take place when there is switching from one process to another process, right? So what happens here is, so it is going to save the current context of process 1 to PCB0. So PCB is nothing but what? Process control block. So PCB0 is the process control block associated with process 1. So all the information of process 1 at the time of preemption or interruption should be saved to PCB0. So that is going to take place, and then OS should perform other operations which are related to context switching, and then it should reload the context which is related to process 2. Yes, so in order to perform all this, it is going to take certain time, and that will lead to a delay. So this delay is because of what? Context switching. Okay, so after this context switching or after this delay due to context switching, process 2 will be scheduled for execution and it will be in running state. So when process 2 will be in running state, what will happen to process 1? Yes, so it will be waiting in ready queue. So after execution of process 2 for a particular duration of time, at this point of time we require to switch the execution back to process 1. So again, once the execution switches to process 1 from process 2, will the process 1 start its execution instantly? No. Again there will be a delay because of context switching. So what will be taking place here is, at this point of time we need which is interrupted process and which is interrupting process. So at this point of time, process 2 is interrupted process and process 1 is interrupting process. So during this switching, what should perform? Context switching should perform. That is, it should save the context of process 2 into PCB1. So PCB1 is process control block 1, which is associated with process 2. Okay, and again the OS should perform all the operations related to context switching, and then it should reload the context for process 1 from PCB0. So when the process 1 was interrupted earlier, all the data related to process 1 was saved. So that should be reloaded to start or to resume its execution at this point of time. So that is also done. So it is nothing but what? Context retrieval. So what we did here, so saving the information related to process 1 is nothing but context saving, and what we are doing, we are reloading all the information related to process 1 to start its execution from PCB0 is called as context retrieval. Okay, so now after this delay, process 1 will start its execution. So when process 1 is in execution, process 2 will be in ready queue. So it will be waiting in ready queue. Yes, so this pictorial representation has given better idea about context switching, context saving and context retrieval. Yes. So the next concept is types of multitasking. So we have understood what is multitasking and we have understood some concepts which are required for multitasking, that is context switching, context saving and context retrieval. Now let us go through which are the different types of multitasking. So there are three major types of multitasking. One is cooperative multitasking, another is preemptive multitasking and one more is non-preemptive multitasking. So what are the points related to cooperative multitasking? Means it is the most primitive form of multitasking. So the basic type of multitasking is cooperative multitasking. So in which the process or task is going to get a chance to execute only when currently executing task is going to voluntarily release the CPU. Yes, so there will be number of processes or tasks. So any process or task get a chance to execute only if the currently executing task or process is going to release the CPU. Okay. In cooperative multitasking, any task or process can hold the CPU for any amount of time. Any process or a task can hold the CPU for any amount of time. So it is named as cooperative multitasking because in this type of multitasking, so it involves the mercy of task for each other to get CPU time. So there should be a cooperation among the different processors so that each of these processes will get a chance to execute. Okay. If the task become non-cooperative, that is a particular task holds the processor for long duration of time, then what happens? The other task or processes will not get a chance to execute. Okay. And what about preemptive multitasking? So preemptive multitasking ensures that all the tasks or processes will get a chance for execution. But when they will be executing and for what duration of time they will be executing will be decided by the scheduling algorithm which we are going to implement. Okay. So depending upon different scheduling algorithm, the processes may be scheduled at different interval of time and for a particular duration of time. Okay. And then the currently running task or process is preempted to give a chance to other task or process to execute. So we have already come across the term preemption in previous videos. So preemption is nothing but forcibly suspending the execution of a process. Yes. So forcibly suspending the execution of a process can be called as preemption. So this preemption of task can be based on two concepts. So either it could be based on time slot, that is the processes will be allocated a particular duration of time for execution. So they will be executing for that time duration. Once that time duration is completed, they will be preempted from execution. Or it could be based on one more concept, that is priority. There will be a currently executing task. So if there is one more task that has arrived into ready queue with higher priority, in that case the currently executing task will be suspended from execution and the newly entered task with higher priority will be scheduled. Okay. So preemption in case of preemptive multitasking can be based on either time slot or it could be based on priority. Yes. So what about non-preemptive multitasking means? So here the task or process to which CPU is currently allocated is allocated to execute until it terminates or it enters the blocked or wait state. So waiting for an IO or system resource. So we know that whenever a process is in running state, if it requires certain IO or if it requires certain system resources, then it will be sent to blocked or wait state. Correct? Okay. So what would be the difference between the non-preemptive multitasking and cooperative multitasking means, if in case of non-preemptive multitasking, if the process enters blocked or wait state, it is going to release the CPU so that the CPU can be allocated for other processes in the ready queue. Whereas in case of cooperative multitasking, so the process is not going to release the CPU even when it enters blocked or wait state. So the other processes should also wait unless the processor is released by the currently executing process. So these are the types of multitasking: cooperative multitasking, preemptive multitasking and non-preemptive multitasking. So hope these concepts are clear to all of you. So let us move on. So the next topic is task scheduling. So we have come across different types of multitasking. So let us understand how we can schedule these multiple tasks. So in case of multitasking, there should be some mechanism to share the CPU among the different tasks and to decide which process or task is to be executed at a given point of time. Correct? So there will be multiple tasks. If you consider a multitasking system, so there will be multiple tasks. So there should be some mechanism which is going to decide which task among these multiple tasks should be scheduled for execution and for how much duration of time it should be executed. And that mechanism is called as task scheduling. So task scheduling forms the basis for multitasking. So the basic concept required to perform multitasking is task scheduling. So the different scheduling policies will form the guidelines for determining which task is to be executed and when. So different scheduling policies will follow different rules to decide which task should be scheduled at a given instance of time and for how much duration. Okay, so the scheduling policies are run in an algorithm by the OS kernel as a service. So the scheduling policies will be run in the form of algorithm. Yes, and it will be run through whom? OS kernel as a OS kernel service. And who is going to take care of it? So repeatedly we have come across this thing. Task scheduling will be taken care by scheduler. Yes? Okay. So the process scheduling decision may take place under 4 scenarios. So which are those? Means when a process switches its state to ready state from running state. So that will be the scenario 1. And when a process switches its state to block state from running state, that will be the scenario 2. Or when the process switches to ready state from block state, that will be the scenario 3. And when it is going to switch to completed state, that will be the final and scenario 4. Okay, so what happens in scenario 1? A process switches to ready state from running state. So how this preemption can occur? So it will be through preemptive scheduling. So we have come across different types of scheduling, right? So in case of scenario 1, which type of scheduling is taking place? It is preemptive scheduling. Yes. So when a process is going to switch to ready state from running state, it takes place because of preemptive scheduling. Then, and scenario 2, that is switching of state to block state from running state, can be either preemptive or non-preemptive. And then in case of scenario 3, that is when a process switches to ready state from block state, means when a high priority process in blocked or wait state, the scheduler picks it for execution if the scheduling policy is priority based preemptive. So it is preemptive scheduling, in that it is priority based scheduling. So with respect to scenario 2, what we need to understand is when the high priority process in the blocked or wait state gets its resources, then that will be picked by the scheduler for execution. Okay, and this is done only if it is following preemptive scheduling, and especially priority based preemptive scheduling. Okay, and what about scenario 4? So it can take place either because of preemptive scheduling or non-preemptive scheduling, or even because of cooperative scheduling. Process in the running state will be entering completed state either because of any of the task scheduling. Either it could be preemptive, or it could be non-preemptive, or it could be cooperative scheduling. Okay, so these were the points we need to understand. So next is what? Till now we have understood what is task scheduling and how important it is to understand what is task scheduling to perform multitasking. Now let us go through different parameters that should be considered while selecting a scheduling algorithm. So first is what? CPU utilization. So what is CPU utilization? It is the measure of how much percentage of CPU is being utilized. So this CPU utilization should be maximum. So we need to select a scheduling policy which is going to provide maximum CPU utilization. Okay. The next parameter is throughput. So it is the number of processes executed per unit time. So that will be related to speed of execution. So throughput should be always higher. Okay. Then the turnaround time. So it is the amount of time taken by a process for completing its execution. So what is the total time taken by the process to complete its execution is turnaround time, or TAT. What is turnaround time means? It is the time spent by process in created state plus the time spent by the process in ready state plus the time spent by the process in blocked or waiting state plus the time spent by the process in running state. So all this time together will be summed up as turnaround time for a process. So this should be again minimum. So next concept is waiting time. So it is the amount of time spent by the process in ready queue waiting to get CPU. That duration of time is called as waiting time, and this waiting time should be minimal. So we have to select a scheduling algorithm wherein this waiting time will be less or minimum. Okay, and next parameter is response time. So time elapsed between submission of process and the first response. So this should be least as possible. So what is response time means? It is the time duration between a process is being scheduled and the first response by the process is generated. So this time is called as response time, and again this should be as least as possible. So we have to select a scheduling algorithm such a way that the process once scheduled should generate its first response as quick as possible. Correct? So finally we can summarize that a good scheduling policy is one which is having high CPU utilization, minimum turnaround time and maximum throughput and least response time. Correct? So what about the next concept? So the OS is going to maintain various queues in connection with CPU scheduling, and the process passes through these queues during the course of admittance to execution completion. So in the course of traverse of a process from admittance to its completion, it will be going through different queues that are maintained by the operating system. So we shall see which are those different queues. So first is job queue. So it contains all the processes in the system. Once a process is created, so it will be in the job queue. Okay, and next queue is ready queue. It contains all the processes which are ready for execution and waiting for the CPU. So what is that? So all the processes which will be in ready queue. So all the processes which will be in the ready state will be in the ready queue. So in ready state what happens? The processes will be loaded into the memory but CPU will not be allocated, right? So all the processes which are in ready state will be in ready queue. And then what is the one more queue? That is device queue. It contains processes which are waiting for an IO device. So whenever a process is in running state and if it requires any IO device, what happens? The process will be changing its state from running state to block state. So all the processes which will be in block state will be maintained in device queue. Okay. So these are the different queues: job queue, ready queue and device queue, which will be maintained by operating system during scheduling of multiple processes. Okay. So next let us consider an illustration which is going to represent the transition of process through these different queues. That is transition of process from job queue, ready queue and device queue. Okay. So let us consider these three queues: job queue, ready queue and device queue. And next is, so these are the other components that will be taking part in the task scheduling. So this is a new process that is created and this is our scheduler. So this will be the CPU or processor that will be allocated for different processes, and this is device manager. So we have come across device manager in the first video, I think. Yes, so device manager is one of the services that are provided by OS kernel. Any IO requirement will be taken care by device manager through API, application programming interface. Correct? So that we have come across. So now let us see how the process is going to traverse these different queues. So when a process is first admitted, it can be admitted directly to ready queue or it can be admitted to job queue if there are no processes waiting in the job queue. If the job queue is empty, we can directly admit the process into ready queue. That is, it can be directly loaded into memory. Okay, and then the scheduler is going to pick a process from the ready queue for scheduling, and it is going to allocate the CPU for the process to execute. Okay, and the process which is being executed can be preempted by the scheduler. Yes, if it is time-based scheduling, after a certain interval of time, the scheduler is going to preempt the process and it is going to send it back to ready queue. Yes, and then suppose if there is any process being executed and it requires certain IO device, so the scheduler is going to pick that process and send it to device queue. Okay, and then one more thing is there can be a process which is in running state sent to ready state. That is also possible if it is preempted. So by any higher priority process, then it will be sent to what? Ready queue. Yes, and then a process which will be in running state, which will be executing, which will be holding the CPU, and if it requires certain resources, then it will be sent to again device queue. Okay, then here in the device queue, the device manager is going to grant the request. So that is, whenever there is some IO requirement or IO request or IO call will be generated. So the device manager is going to grant that request. In that case, what happens? The process which was in device queue on completing its IO will be sent to ready queue. Okay, like this the process is going to traverse from job queue, ready queue and device queue. Okay, so hope you understood. The next concepts will be related to different scheduling policies or algorithms that we can implement, but let us consider this in the next part of the video, wherein we will be trying to understand different scheduling algorithms by considering appropriate illustrations. So I think that part will be very interesting, and that will be the final part related to this module, wherein we will be also seeing how to choose an RTOS. Okay, so let me stop here for this video. We shall meet in the next video. Till then, take care and goodbye.